Okay, let's unpack this. We spent a lot of time talking about, the big ideas, the vocabulary,
Hmm.
but sometimes the real strength, whether you're writing or speaking, it's kind of hidden. It's in the architecture of the sentences themselves.
Absolutely. It's those small words that do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into those tiny but incredibly powerful words, the connectors.
That's right. And this dive, it's really about achieving coherence.
Yeah.
How do you make your thoughts flow logically? It all comes down to these, well, conjunctions and certain
And the
adverbs.
source material we looked at was pretty interesting, wasn't it? It went from basic stuff like definitions really fast.
Oh, absolutely. It ramped up quickly to, like, advanced academic rules, the kind of thing you'd need for, say, IELTS Band 9 writing. Real precision.
So our mission for you listening isn't just here's a list of words. It's about mastering how they work, especially the punctuation. That's key.
It really is.
Right.
We've basically boiled down this intense grammar discussion into three main groups of connectors.
Right. We've got the logical linkers, the equalizers, and then the dependency markers.
And we'll show you exactly how these different types build the three main sentence structures: simple, compound, and complex.
By the end of this, hopefully you'll be looking at sentence construction in a whole new way with surgical precision, as we said. Okay, let's start with maybe the most formal group, the ones that seem to cause the most trouble.
Sounds good. That would be the logical linkers, or as the material called them, conjunctive adverbs. CAs for short.
CAs.
Right.
And these are really the workhorses for like sophisticated arguments, aren't they?
They really are.
Yeah.
A conjunctive adverb is, well, it's a bit of a hybrid. Functionally, it's an adverb. It modifies or explains the relationship between ideas.
Okay.
But structurally, it connects two clauses. And crucially, these have to be independent clauses. Complete thoughts.
Two full sentences, basically.
Exactly. And the CA spells out the logical link. Is it cause and effect? Is it contrast? Addition? That kind of thing.
And this is where we hit that punctuation rule, the one everyone seems to get wrong in formal writing.
Mm-hmm. The big one.
Because they aren't true conjunctions like and or but, the punctuation has to be different. So walk us through it. What's the absolute rule for a CA joining two independent clauses?
Okay, this is the firewall, like you said. If you have two independent clauses, two complete thoughts, and you join them with a conjunctive adverb,
Like however or therefore.
precisely, then you must put a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb and a comma after it. Semicolon, CA, comma.
That's the non-negotiable structure.
Non-negotiable in formal writing, yes.
Let's use that example from the notes. It really makes it clear.
Okay, the example was, I was exhausted. However, I finished the paper before the deadline.
Right, so I was exhausted. That's a complete thought. Independent clause one.
Correct. Then you hit the semicolon. That marks the end of the first complete thought,
Then the CA, however,
followed by the comma.
and then the second complete thought. I finished the paper before the deadline. Independent clause two.
Exactly. Semicolon, CA, comma. That structure links the two complete thoughts while showing the contrast signaled by however.
And if you just put a comma there before however,
That's the dreaded comma splice. A major punctuation error because a comma alone isn't strong enough to join two independent clauses in this way. However, isn't a coordinating conjunction.
that really is the common trap, isn't it? People feel like something needs to go there, a pause maybe.
Right, they sense the break.
So they stick in a comma. But the source material was crystal clear. Comma alone. Nope, not with the CA joining independent clauses.
Precisely. That semicolon is crucial because it acknowledges that these two clauses could stand alone as separate sentences. They are independent. The CA just bridges the logical gap between them.
What if the CA starts a whole new sentence? Does the rule change?
Ah, yes. If it's starting a sentence, it's simpler. You just have the preceding sentence and with a period. Then you start the new sentence with the CA, followed by a comma.
So I was exhausted. However, I finished the paper.
Exactly. Period. Then, however, comma, I finished the paper. The comma still follows the CA when it starts the sentence, but the semicolon isn't needed because you've already used a full stop.
Got it. And it makes sense why the sources spent so much time on this specific punctuation point. It's not just grammar for grammar's sake.
No, not at all.
Mastering these CAs and using a variety of them is apparently a big deal for advanced writing scores, that whole lexical resource thing.
Absolutely. You can't just keep using also and but and so if you want to demonstrate sophisticated control. Using CAs correctly and using different types of CAs shows you can structure complex arguments precisely.
So let's break down those categories the sources mentioned. There were 6, right? Starting with addition.
Right. Addition linkers are for when you're adding more information, stacking evidence, reinforcing a point you just made.
Beyond just also.
Exactly. Think moreover, furthermore, besides. These signal that the next independent clause adds more weight to the first one.
Like the example. The new policy is environmentally unsound. Moreover, it is prohibitively expensive.
Perfect. Two independent criticisms, linked by moreover with the proper semicolon comma structure. You're adding another reason.
Okay, next up, contrast. This is huge for arguments, debates, essays.
Definitely. This is where you introduce something that opposes or conflicts with the previous statement. However, is the most common.
But we shouldn't overuse it.
Right. Good writers will mix it up with nevertheless. Nonetheless, on the other hand, instead.
Let's see the example. The initial investment was substantial. Nevertheless, the company saw profits within the first quarter.
See how that semicolon structure gives the contrast real weight? It feels formal, deliberate.
It really does. Okay, then the ones vital for analysis, cause and effect, showing results.
Yes, these signal a consequence or result, therefore consequently thus, hence.
And these are probably the ones most often misused with just a comma, right?
Very likely. People treat it therefore like so, but grammatically it's different. You have to drill in that semicolon rule.
Like, the data supported the hypothesis. Consequently, the research team recommended immediate implementation.
Perfect. Cause, CA, comma, effect. The logic flows, marked correctly.
What about just ordering things? Sequence time.
These are often simpler, things like then, next, finally, subsequently. They often start sentences to clearly mark steps in a process or narrative.
Like, the committee reviewed the final designs. Subsequently, they voted on the proposal.
Exactly. Using subsequently there adds a touch more formality than just then.
Okay, two more categories. Emphasis. How do we use CAs to underline a point?
Right. You use words like indeed, certainly, or in fact when you want to strongly affirm or amplify what you just said.
Example.
The new theorem revolutionized the field. In fact, its implications are still being explored today. You make a strong claim, then use the semicolon structure to bridge to an even stronger confirmation or elaboration.
Nice. And the last one, comparison, drawing parallels.
Yeah, words like likewise and similarly. You use these when you're pointing out a resemblance between two separate situations or facts presented in independent clauses.
Like, the American market reacted strongly to the downturn. Similarly, European trading floors saw sharp declines.
Precisely. Using these different CAs with that consistent semicolon before, comma after rule when joining independent clauses, it's really a hallmark of sophisticated writing. It shows control.
Okay, so we've navigated the tricky territory of conjunctive adverbs and their semicolons. Here's where it gets maybe a little more straightforward, or at least more familiar.
Yes. Moving on to the second group, the equalizers.
The coordinating conjunctions, better known probably by that acronym.
Fanboys.
Fanboys. Right, everyone remembers that one from school, hopefully.
Hopefully. It stands for the 7 true or coordinating conjunctions in English. For, and, nor but, or yet, so.
And their whole job is just joining equal things.
Exactly. Grammatically equal things. Could be 2 words, salt and pepper, 2 phrases, over the river and through the woods, or, most importantly for our sentence structure discussion, 2 independent clauses.
Okay, so when a fanboy's word joins 2 independent clauses, that's when we get a compound sentence, right?
That's the definition of a compound sentence. 2 independent clauses, linked by a coordinating conjunction.
And unlike those CAs, which are really adverbs doing a linking job, these amboys are built for conjunction. They are pure connectors, and that makes the punctuation much simpler.
Much simpler, yes. The standard rule for creating a compound sentence using fanboys is very clear, at least in formal writing.
What is it?
It's independent clause 1, then a comma, then the fanboys word, then independent clause 2.
Comma before the fanboys.
Comma before the fanboys, yes.
Let's use that earlier example again, but swap the connector. Instead of she studied hard, therefore she passed, we use a fanboys word.
Right, so it becomes she studied hard, so she passed the exam.
Comma, then the second clause. Much cleaner than the semicolon thing.
It is cleaner, but that comma is still crucial for clarity. It signals the reader, okay, the first complete thought just ended, and here comes the connector to the second complete thought. It prevents misreading, especially in longer sentences.
Right. If you left the comma out of, I tried to call the office, but the line was busy, especially if the first part was longer, you might just run the two together in your head, a run-on.
Exactly. It becomes a fused sentence, technically. The comma helps the reader parse it correctly.
Okay, but The source material mentioned this comma controversy, places where people do often leave the comma out, especially with and or but. This feels like where the simple rule gets a bit fuzzy.
It does get a bit fuzzy in practice, though the formal rule remains. The notes pointed out two main exceptions where the comma is sometimes omitted.
What's the first one?
Brevity. If both clauses are very short, very closely linked, and the rhythm just feels right without the comma, it's sometimes dropped. Like Caesar's famous line,
I came and I saw.
right?
Hmm.
Veni, vici, vici. You wouldn't put commas in there usually, it's punchy. But this is more stylistic and less common in formal academic work.
Okay, short and punchy, maybe skip the comma. What's the second exception? This one seemed more common.
This one is structurally important. It's when the subject of the second clause is exactly the same as the subject of the first clause, and you omit the subject in the second clause.
Ah, okay. So you don't repeat the subject.
Right. So instead of saying, I studied hard and I passed the exam, which follows the comma plus fanboys plus independent clause rule,
You'd say.
I studied hard and passed the exam.
Ah, because pass the exam doesn't have its own subject anymore. It's not a full independent clause.
Precisely. It's become a compound predicate, sharing the subject I.
Yeah.
And because the second part is no longer an independent clause, you must not use a comma before the and. Putting a comma there would actually be an error.
Wow. Okay. That's subtle. So same subject repeated, need the comma. Same subject omitted in the second part, definitely no comma.
That's the key distinction. It changes the structure.
That explains a lot of sentences, you see.
It does. But the sources also gave that final piece of advice, kind of a safety net. For any formal or high-stakes writing, if you're sure you have two genuine, complete independent clauses, using the comma before the fanboys is always the safest, clearest, and most formally correct option. When in doubt, use the comma.
You know what's really fascinating here when you step back
Yeah.
is that we just talked about two different kinds of words. The conjunctive adverbs like however and the coordinating conjunctions, the fanboys like but.
Right. And they both do the same basic job.
Yeah.
Connect two independent clauses.
Exactly the same core function. But their punctuation is completely different. And that punctuation difference isn't arbitrary. It reflects their underlying grammatical nature. One's an adverb, one's a true conjunction.
And getting that punctuation right is like a signal to the reader about the kind of connection you're making and that you understand the grammar.
It's fundamental for that advanced structural understanding we talked about.
So let's really nail this difference down. Just focus on the punctuation and what it tells us.
Okay. Let's summarize the two paths for joining independent clauses.
Option A, use an equalizer. That's the amboy sass. Right. This creates a compound sentence. The relationship is usually pretty basic addition with and, contrast with but, choice with or, equal fitting.
And the punctuation rule is simple.
Simple. Comma before the fanboy's word. Example. The proposal was ambitious, but it was financially sound. Comma, but, second clause.
Okay. Option B, use a logical linker. That's the conjunctive adverb.
Yes, like however, therefore, moreover. This signals a more specific, often more complex logical relationship, strong contrast, cause-effect, addition with emphasis.
And the punctuation rule is the tricky one.
The semicolon rule.
Yeah.
Semicolon before the CA, comma after the CA. Example. The proposal was ambitious, however, it was financially sound. Semicolon, however, comma, second clause.
It seems like such a small difference, comma versus semicolon, comma, but the sources really hammered home that messing this up is a big deal.
It is, especially that comma splice error. Using a CA like therefore or however with just a comma before it, like you would use so or but.
So if I write, the results were inconclusive, therefore more testing is required, that's wrong, even though it sounds okay.
That's the classic comma splice. It sounds okay because we often speak that way, but in writing, therefore is an adverb. It cannot join two independent clauses with only a comma.
How do I fix it?
Two main ways. You can make them separate sentences. The results were inconclusive. Therefore, more testing is required. Or use a semicolon. The results were inconclusive. Therefore, more testing is required.
So that semicolon is almost like a mini period, isn't it? It signals the end of the first complete thought.
That's a great way to think about it. It provides that necessary separation because the CA isn't strong enough on its own to fuse the clauses like a fanboy's word can.
The fanboy's word does the joining. The CA just explains the relationship after the semicolon has already marked the structural break.
Exactly. The fanboys is the glue. The CA is more like a signpost after you've already put a structural join in the semicolon in place. Understanding that distinction is key to avoiding that core mistake.
Okay. we've covered connectors that join equal independent clauses using either amboys or CAs. Now for the third and final type, which creates a different kind of relationship altogether.
Right. We're moving on to the dependency markers, which are technically called subordinating conjunctions, or SCs.
Subordinating, so suggesting something is lower rank, less important.
In a grammatical sense, yes. Subordinating conjunctions introduce a dependent clause. And a dependent clause, even though it has a subject and a verb, can't stand on its own as a complete sentence. It doesn't express a complete thought.
It needs something else.
It needs an independent clause to attach to. The SC is the word that signals, hey, this next bit is dependent, needs a main clause. And it also tells you the relationship is it about time, cause, a condition, a contrast.
So these SCs are the magic ingredient for making complex sentences.
Precisely. A complex sentence is defined as having one independent clause, the main thought, and at least one dependent clause, the modifying or subordinate thought, linked by a subordinating conjunction.
So we're joining unequal parts now. A complete thought and an incomplete thought.
Exactly. The independent clause carries the main message, and the dependent clause adds extra information, context, reason, condition, etc.
And what about punctuation for these? Is it complicated like the CAs?
Actually, it's much more straightforward, though people still sometimes miss it. It depends entirely on where the dependent clause is placed in the sentence. There are really just two patterns to remember.
Okay, what's pattern one? Rule A.
Rule A is when the dependent clause comes first. If you start the sentence with a dependent clause, beginning with the SC, you must put a comma after the dependent clause before the independent clause begins.
Like an introductory phrase needs a comma.
Exactly the same principle. The structure is SC plus dependent clause, co-MA independent clause.
Let's use the source example.
Because the traffic was heavy, I arrived late. Because is the SC, the traffic was heavy, is the dependent clause. Since it comes first, you need that comma before the main clause, I arrived late.
Okay, makes sense. What's rule B?
Rule B is when the independent clause comes first, followed by the dependent clause. In this case, the subordinating conjunction itself acts as the link, and you typically don't need a comma.
So no comma, usually.
Generally, no. The structure is independent clause plus SC plus dependent clause. Using the same example. I arrived late because the traffic was heavy.
I arrived late, independent, then because SC, then the traffic was heavy, dependent. No comma needed between late and because.
Correct. The because smoothly connects the reason to the main statement without needing an extra pause signaled by a comma. Sometimes if the dependent clause is very long or non-essential, a comma might be used for clarity, but the standard is no comma.
Okay, that seems pretty clear. Dependent first, use a comma. Independent first, usually no comma.
That's the core rule.
And just like with CAs, the power here comes from using a variety of these SCs, right? Not just sticking to because or if or when.
Absolutely. Expanding your range of subordinating conjunctions is crucial for nuanced and sophisticated writing. Let's look at the categories from the notes.
Okay, first up, cause reason. We know because. What else?
Also since and as. For example, since the data was incomplete, the board delayed the decision. Since introduces the dependent reason, and because it starts the sentence, you have the comma.
Good one. Then the big one for essays, contrast concession. Showing an opposing idea, but in a dependent way.
Right. This is where you really see the difference between SCs, CAs, and amboys. The main SCs here are although, though, even though, whereas, and while.
How is using although different from using but or however?
Great question. It's about grammatical weight. Although introduces a dependent clause, making the concession secondary to the main point.
Give me an example.
Although the results were promising, the funding was still cut. The main point, the independent clause, is the funding was still cut. The promising results are presented as a subordinate contrasting background fact using although.
Okay. Compare that to.
Compared to the compound sentence. The results were promising, but the funding was cut. Two equal opposing ideas, or the CA structure. The results were promising, however, the funding was cut. Two independent ideas linked by a strong contrast adverb.
So using although makes the promising results part grammatically less important than the funding cut part.
Exactly. It subordinates that idea. It's a very useful way to manage emphasis and show complex relationships between ideas. It's not just choosing a different word, it's choosing a different sentence structure.
That's a really important insight. Okay, what other SC categories?
We have condition. Words like if, unless, provided that, as long as. These set up a condition for the main clause. Unless the budget is approved, the project cannot proceed. Dependent condition first, so comma needed.
Got it. And time.
Lots of these. When, while, after, before, until, as soon as. They just place the main clause in a time frame relative to the dependent clause.
Like, until the report is finalized, the team must wait. Starts with until dependent clause first needs the comma.
Perfect application of Rule A. And then there are a few others for more specific relationships. Purpose, like so that, in order that. Comparison, like Dan as Gans. And result, like the structure, so that he was so tired that he fell asleep.
Wow, okay, so SCs give us a huge toolkit for creating these complex sentences with all sorts of nuanced relationships. So let's pull all these threads together. We've looked at conjunctive adverbs, emboys, conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions. What does this all mean for someone just trying to write more clearly, more effectively?
It means you now have the blueprints for the 3 fundamental sentence structures in English. Mastering these connectors is what gives you control over sentence variety, which is crucial for good writing.
Let's quickly recap those 3 structures using our connectors. First, the bedrock.
The simple sentence. Just one independent clause. No complex connectors needed. I kept working. Direct. Simple.
Good for emphasis, but too many makes writing sound.
Choppy. Immature sometimes.
Right, so level 2.
The compound sentence. That's 2 independent clauses joined by a fanboys coordinator. I was tired, but I kept working. It shows 2 ideas as balanced or related equals, essential for linking related main points.
Comma before the fanboys is key there.
Absolutely.
And level 3, the powerhouse for academic stuff.
The complex sentence. 1 independent clause plus at least 1 dependent clause introduced by a subordinating conjunction. I kept working, although I was tired. This is where you show sophisticated relationships. Cause, condition, concession, time, context. The main idea is highlighted, the other is subordinate.
And the big takeaway from the sources, especially thinking about things like IELTS or academic essays,
Is variety. Good writers don't just use one type. They make simple, compound, and complex sentences effectively. Relying too heavily on simple and compound sentences makes writing seem less sophisticated. Using complex sentences correctly demonstrates grammatical range and control.
and that control comes right back to knowing the punctuation rules for each type of connector we discussed.
Exactly. Is the relationship equal? Use and boys and a comma. Is it a logical link between 2 strong independent points? Use a CA with a semicolon and comma. Is one idea dependent on the other? Use an SC and punctuate based on clause order.
Getting those confused, like using a comma before, however, to join independent clauses, that's the kind of error that really stands out negatively.
It undermines the writer's credibility, suggesting they haven't quite mastered formal sentence structure. The sources were clear. Don't let conjunctive adverbs masquerade as coordinating conjunctions. Respect the semicolon.
Respect the semicolon. I like that.
If we connect this all to the bigger picture, mastering these little words, these grammatical road signs, it's really about precision. It's the difference between just getting your idea across and getting it across with clarity, nuance, and the right emphasis. Every time you choose between but, or however, or although, you're making a decision about structure and logical weight.
You're guiding the reader, telling them exactly how to connect the dots in your argument.
Precisely. Are these ideas equal partners? Is one a consequence of the other? Is one just a background condition? Your choice of connector and punctuation signals all of that.
So this deep dive, it started with what felt like basic grammar, maybe?
Yeah, definitions.
But it really blew up into the whole blueprint for building sophisticated English sentences. You should now have a much clearer map for simple, compound, and complex structures, and crucially, how CAs, envoys, and SCs fit into that, punctuation included.
We spent a good chunk of time on those 7M boys, didn't we? Because their comma-only rule is so distinct when joining independent clauses compared to the CAs.
Definitely. So here's something to think about as we wrap up, a final thought for you, the listener.
Okay.
We know the 7M boys have that special comma-only privilege for joining independent clauses, and we know conjunctive adverbs like therefore or nevertheless absolutely need the semicolon comma treatment.
Right.
So think about other common English words that seem to make connections. Words like meanwhile, maybe, or otherwise. Are you ever tempted to just stick a comma before them and link 2 full sentences?
Ooh, good question. Are they M boys or are they more like CAs?
Exactly. Could they be words that are sneakily demanding a semicolon before them and a comma after them in formal writing? Knowing which words fall into which camp, understanding that functional difference, that's the kind of knowledge that takes your writing from just fluent to truly polished and formally correct. It's that final level of control.